From the dawn of consciousness, humanity has looked up at the night sky, an endless backdrop of wonder and unanswered questions. In the silence of the night, we search for meaning, search for connection, and sometimes the sky seems to look back at us. Human history is scattered with strange stories. Imagine you are in Nuremberg, Germany, in the year 1561. Hundreds of horrified citizens witness a spectacle they describe as an intense celestial battle with numerous red, blue, and black orbs, and large crosses flying in the sky. Or let's go further east, to Japan in 1803. Local fishermen tell of a hollow ship, or Utsurobune, drifting ashore. They describe a round vessel made of metal and glass, with strange symbols that no one could read. Inside is a beautiful woman, speaking an unknown language. These stories, separated by centuries and oceans, share a common theme: the appearance of objects and entities that seem not of this world. But what if these accounts are not just folklore? What if they are distorted memories of real encounters? For centuries, religious texts, especially the Bible, have been the foundation of Western civilization. They contain stories of faith, of miracles, and of divine intervention. But what if we read these stories through a different lens? What if our ancestors, in an age lacking knowledge of the cosmos and other planets, encountered advanced technology far beyond their comprehension? How would they explain it? They wouldn't call it technology. They would call it a miracle. They wouldn't call those who controlled them astronauts or aliens. They would call them angels or God. This is not an attempt to undermine faith, but rather a journey of curiosity, an intellectual exploration of the possibility that we may not have been alone for much longer than we imagine. On this journey, we will revisit the most familiar passages of the Bible and ask the question, are there clues to an ancient connection hidden in plain sight? Our first story begins on a quiet night in the east, the story of the Star of Bethlehem. According to the Gospel of Matthew, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." But this was no ordinary star. Stars do not move across the night sky in this way. The Bible records that the star went before them until it stopped directly over the place where the child was. For centuries, astronomers have tried to explain this phenomenon. Some suggest it was a rare conjunction of planets like Jupiter and Saturn. Others believe it was a supernova, a dying star exploding in brilliance. But do these explanations truly fit the description? Could a planetary conjunction or a supernova guide the wise men on a long journey and then stop at a specific location? Purposeful movement. That is the key. Now, let us consider another possibility. Could the Star of Bethlehem have been an artificial light source? Something controlled, a flying object, moving with purpose and intelligence to guide the wise men to their destination. To an ancient observer, a glowing vessel hovering in the sky would be described precisely as a wondrous star. Next, we come to the mysterious story of Enoch, a figure who lived before the Great Flood. Genesis describes him briefly but profoundly. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away. Unlike the other patriarchs, Enoch did not die. He was simply taken. In traditional theological understanding, walked with God means he lived a righteous life, and was rewarded by ascending to heaven without tasting death. But the phrase took him away. What does it imply? Could this have been a physical event? An ancient non-canonical text, the Book of Enoch, which is considered canonical by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, tells a much more detailed story. It describes Enoch being taken to the heavens by angels, where he is shown the secrets of the universe, knowledge of astronomy, and the future of humanity. Were angels the way an ancient person would describe beings of superior intelligence? And was being taken a primitive description of being brought aboard a vessel by visitors from a distant place to impart knowledge? The question remains, suspended in the silent space between faith and fact. In the chronicles of the prophets, there are few events as dramatic or as mysterious as the ascension of Elijah. Elijah was a powerful prophet of Israel. When his time on earth ended, he did not die as mortals do. He, like Enoch before him, was taken. The second book of Kings describes this moment vividly, as Elijah and his successor Elisha were walking and talking. Suddenly, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. Then Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Stop and visualize this scene through the eyes of an ancient observer. This is not a soft, peaceful cloud. This is a violent event. Fire, a whirlwind. If we temporarily set aside metaphor and consider it as a literal description, what were they witnessing? To a person who had never known machinery, a mechanical, high-tech object descending from the sky, emitting brilliant light and heat. How would it be described? Could chariot of fire be the only way to describe a metallic vessel reflecting light or emitting energy? Could horses of fire be thrusters or energy sources that the ancients could not comprehend, and thus resorted to the image of divine horses? And finally, Elijah is taken away in a whirlwind, a vortex of wind. This is a description very similar to modern reports of strange objects, taking off at great speed, creating powerful air disturbances and a thunderous noise. Could Elijah be another case of a direct contact, an intervention, or an extraction by entities possessing technology that his era could only call divine? But perhaps the most detailed and baffling description of an unidentified object in the Bible comes from the prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel was a priest, exiled in Babylon. By the river Kabar, he had a vision that changed his life. He did not just describe a mere light, he described a machine. He wrote of a windstorm coming from the north, a great cloud with flashing fire, and a brilliant light around it. And from the midst of that fire came the likeness of 4 living creatures. Each had 4 faces and 4 wings. But the most fascinating thing was what was beside them. Ezekiel described wheels. He said, the appearance and structure of the wheels were like the gleam of beryl, and they looked as if a wheel were within another wheel. Think about this. A wheel inside another wheel. He added that when they moved, they could go in any of their 4 directions without turning. This is a description of a system capable of omnidirectional movement, a technology far beyond anything that existed. In the 6th century BC, some theorists, like NASA engineer Joseph F. Blumrich, have actually tried to sketch what Ezekiel described. and concluded that it closely resembles the design of an omnidirectional landing module. Ezekiel, a man of the Iron Age, was trying his best to articulate something completely alien to him. Fire, gleaming metal, wheels full of eyes, perhaps lights or sensors, all point to an encounter with a machine, and not just a spiritual vision. Our journey continues with the entire nation of Israel. As they fled Egypt and wandered in the desert, they were not alone. The book of Exodus tells, "The Lord went before them, by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or by night." Once again, we see an object demonstrating intelligence and purpose. This was not a random weather phenomenon. The pillar of cloud and pillar of fire did not stay still. It went before them. It led the way. It stopped when they needed to rest and moved when they needed to travel. Furthermore, it protected them. When the Egyptian army pursued, the pillar of cloud moved behind the Israelites, becoming a barrier between them and the enemy. A natural phenomenon cannot behave with such tactical awareness. If we apply a technological lens, could the pillar of fire at night and the pillar of cloud by day be two modes of operation for the same object? Could the pillar of cloud be a cloaking system or water vapor condensing around a large object, and the pillar of fire be its propulsion system or an energy source glowing brilliantly in the desert darkness? An unidentified flying object acting as a guide, a protector, and a tangible symbol of the divine presence to the newly freed slaves. That was, without a doubt, God. Not all recorded encounters were of a guiding or enlightening nature. Sometimes the heavens displayed a terrifying power, a raw force capable of creation and destruction. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most chilling warnings in the Old Testament. Two cities near the Dead Sea, seen as sunken in sin and doomed by judgment. Genesis describes the event unequivocally. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur and fire from the heavens upon Sodom and Gomorrah, a rain of destruction, completely wiping the cities from the face of the earth. For centuries, scholars have tried to find a natural explanation. An earthquake releasing methane gas, a volcanic eruption, or a meteor airburst, an event similar to the Tunguska explosion in Siberia in 1908, which flattened thousands of square kilometers of forest. But the biblical description also bears a disturbing resemblance to something else, an instant, total annihilation, delivered from above. Was fire and sulfur the way a Bronze Age witness would describe an attack with advanced weaponry, a deliberate explosion carried out by a force possessing technology that survivors could only describe as the wrath of God? The story tells that Lot, the only one saved, was warned, "Do not look back." A strange warning, unless looking back meant facing the light of an explosion that could blind. This power was not only for destruction, it was also used to communicate and to instill awe. When Moses led the Israelites to the foot of Mount Sinai, they did not just hear God's voice, they witnessed his descent. The Bible describes a terrifying scene. On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning, a thick cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. Let us analyze these images. Fire, thick smoke, an extremely loud noise, like a trumpet, and the ground trembling violently. These are classic descriptions of a volcanic eruption. But there is one problem. Geologists confirm Mount Sinai is not a volcano. So what descended upon the mountain? What could create the deafening sound of machinery, produce thick smoke as from a furnace, and shake the ground as it arrived? If we look at this description through the lens of technology, it is astonishingly similar to the landing of a massive spacecraft, an energy-filled vehicle, landing on the mountaintop with terrifying power and sound, striking fear into the observers below, an event designed to demonstrate an absolute, undeniable authority. After the event at Sinai, the Israelites were given the Ark of the Covenant. Outwardly, it was a sacred chest, plated in gold containing the 10 Commandments. But the way it was described and handled suggests something more than just a religious symbol. When the Ark was brought into the Temple of Jerusalem, something extraordinary happened. The Book of Kings records, "A cloud filled the house of the Lord. The priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled his house." The glory of the Lord, manifesting as a tangible, energy-filled cloud, so powerful that humans could not approach. The ark was a dangerous object. In the book of Samuel, a man named Uzzah was struck dead, just for reaching out his hand to touch it to keep it from falling. It was described as the place from which God spoke and was used as a weapon in battle. Could the Ark of the Covenant have been an advanced technological device? A powerful energy source? Perhaps a type of massive capacitor or a miniature reactor? Was the cloud of glory an energy discharge or a force field? And the voice, a communication device, allowing the priest to speak with the force that provided it? Finally, we come to one of the strangest visions from the prophet Zechariah. It was not a fiery chariot or a cloud of glory. It was something much more mundane. He wrote, "I looked up and I saw a flying scroll. The angel asked me, 'What do you see?' I answered, 'I see a flying scroll, 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide.'" What is remarkable are the very specific measurements, about 9 meters, 30 feet long, and 4.5 meters, 15 feet wide. This was not a small parchment scroll. This was a large, cylindrical object. Zechariah explained it was a curse flying over the face of the whole earth to punish thieves and liars. In our time, what would we call a flying, cylindrical, purposeful object hovering over the land to observe human behavior? Was Zechariah describing a form of unmanned drone, a surveillance device sent by a power that he could only understand as a messenger of God? From destruction from above to machines landing on mountains and objects wielding unexplainable power, the Bible is filled with events that cross the line of simple miracles and enter the realm of unimaginable technology. We have explored machines of fire, pillars of smoke with intelligence, and trembling mountains. But what happens when the veil is lifted and humanity comes face to face with the very entities controlling them? In the book of Revelation, the Apostle John, while in exile, was given a series of terrifying visions. He described an entity far beyond any traditional description of an angel. He wrote, "I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud, with a rainbow over his head. His face was like the sun, and his legs like pillars of fire." Stop to visualize this image. This is not a creature with feathered wings. This is an entity of pure energy and light. Wrapped in a cloud, could it be condensation around an energy field? Face like the sun, a blinding light, perhaps from a helmet, or an internal energy source so brilliant mortal eyes could not look directly at it. Legs like pillars of fire. Could this be a method of propulsion, or simply energy radiating from an otherworldly being? To John, this was a messenger of God, a divine entity. But his description of a humanoid being, emitting light and fire, also fits alarmingly well with a close encounter with something not of this world. However, not all encounters were apocalyptic. Some were surprisingly intimate. Let us return to Genesis, to the tent of Abraham. The story tells that in the heat of the day, Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. What is remarkable is they are described as men. They were not glowing, had no wings, did not descend in a fiery chariot. They appeared as travelers. Abraham invited them in, washed their feet, and prepared a meal. And they ate. They interacted with the physical world. But as the conversation unfolded, it was clear these were no ordinary travelers. One of them declared that Sarah, Abraham's wife, who was old and past childbearing age, would have a son within the next year. They spoke of a biological intervention, an impossibility. Then they discussed their mission. "We will go down to see if the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is as grievous as the outcry that has reached me." 3 entities, appearing in human form, eating human food, yet possessing prophetic knowledge, the power to manipulate biology, and the authority to decree the destruction of an entire city. If we look through our lens, was this a delegation from an advanced civilization, conducting field reconnaissance, and intervening directly in the human bloodline through the miraculous birth of Isaac? Thousands of years later, an even more personal and pivotal encounter took place. This time, it was not 3, but 1. An entity calling himself Gabriel was sent from God to a town called Nazareth, to a virgin named Mary. Gabriel brought a message that would reshape the world. "Behold, you will conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be called the Son of the Most High." Mary's reaction was not one of fear, but of logical confusion. She asked a perfectly practical question. "How will this be, since I am a virgin?" Gabriel's answer is one of the most cryptic and debated phrases in history. "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you." To faith, this is a divine miracle. But if we pause and analyze the language, a messenger, Gabriel, announces a procedure. The power of the Most High will overshadow her. A civilization capable of interstellar travel would certainly have mastered genetics to a degree we cannot imagine. Is this a description of an advanced medical procedure, a form of artificial insemination, or genetic manipulation performed by an entity that Mary could only understand as an angel? Could the birth of Jesus be a deliberate intervention, a hybridization event designed by entities who have watched and guided humanity from the very beginning? Years later, this same Jesus stood at the Jordan River. When he was baptized, the heavens opened, and a voice echoed from the sky for all to hear, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." A voice from an unidentified source in the sky, a public confirmation from the same power that guided the wise men, that spoke in fire at Sinai, and that sent Gabriel to Nazareth. From fiery chariots to pillars of cloud, from destroyed cities to miraculous births, these ancient texts tell a consistent story of intervention. We are not providing answers. We are only asking questions. Could these stories of faith and salvation history also be the chronicles of a long and complex relationship with visitors from the stars? The answer may not be written in ancient texts, but lies in the infinite silence of the cosmos, waiting for us to discover. The ancient world, a tapestry woven from the dust of time, from empires that rose and fell, and from stories whispered through thousands of generations. These stories are not just history. They are the memory of humankind. But hidden within these sacred texts, between the lines about faith and miracles, could there exist signs of something different? Events that defy all logic, encounters far beyond the comprehension of the people of that time. Tonight, let your mind relax. Journey with us back into the past, not to judge, but to contemplate, to listen to the echoes from antiquity and ask ourselves, what truly happened? Let us begin our journey at a tranquil river. Under the harsh Judean sun, the Jordan River flows lazily. Dust hangs in the air. A crowd is gathered, silent and watching. In the middle of the water, the man named John is performing an ancient ritual. And then a man steps down. His name is Jesus. As he rises from the water, a stillness falls over everything. The scriptures say, at that very moment, the heavens were opened. It wasn't a cloud parting. It was a tearing, a veil being lifted. Imagine that scene through the eyes of a fisherman, a carpenter standing on the bank. What did they see? A blinding beam of light? Or a void suddenly appearing where there was only endless blue? And then he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove. A poetic image, a symbol of peace. But let's pause. Like a dove. Was that the only way the witnesses could describe something descending? Something hovering, moving with an unearthly grace? Immediately after, the sound came. Not thunder, nor wind. A voice boomed, seeming to come from the very opening itself. A voice of absolute weight and authority. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. A message that shook the foundations of faith, a confirmation from heaven. For thousands of years, this has been the story of a divine beginning. But what if, just if, we look at it through a different lens? A lens of unknown possibilities? The ancient contact theory poses a bold question. Was the opening of the heavens the appearance of an object? Was the thing like a dove? A piece of high technology, interpreted by the witnesses with the only vocabulary they knew? And that voice, was it a transmission? An amplified message, broadcast from a source they could not identify, but which they gave the only name worthy, heaven. We are not asserting. We are merely listening to the possibilities hidden within the story. Now, let us leave the peaceful river and go to a city under siege, Jerusalem. Night falls. Outside the city walls, a sea of tents stretches to the horizon. It is the Assyrian army, 185,000 elite warriors, the terror of the ancient world. They are the unstoppable war machine. Inside, King Hezekiah prays in desperation. The city is on the brink of collapse. The prophet Isaiah delivers a prophecy. God will protect the city. That night, there is no battle. No clash of swords. No screams. Only the heavy silence of the desert. Dawn breaks. The sentries on the walls squint into the distance. And then, horror seizes them. The entire Assyrian camp is a graveyard. The Old Testament records it coldly. That night, an angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. When the people woke up early in the morning, behold, they were all dead bodies, 185,000 men, dead in one night. Not a single wound. Historians try to explain this. A sudden plague, a mass poisoning, these are the logical explanations of the natural world. But believers in the ancient contact theory look at the key phrase, angel of the Lord. A single entity, carrying out a deliberate, precise, and swift act of destruction. Was this angel a description for another force? An entity possessing a weapon that we today might call biological or sonic or some form of energy? A surgical, invisible strike, carried out in darkness, leaving absolute devastation without needing an army. Once again, the ancient text only describes the result and names the perpetrator with the language of faith. But the nature of that angel remains a mystery. From silent destruction, we move to an event that altered time itself. The Battle of Gibeon. Joshua, leader of the Israelites, is in a life-or-death pursuit of the Amorite king's coalition. The enemy is breaking, but the sun is setting. Darkness will allow them to escape and regroup. In the midst of the chaotic battle, Joshua does the unthinkable. He looks to the sky and commands, not his soldiers, but the cosmos. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon. And the impossible happened. The Bible records, the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. The text even emphasizes, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky, and did not set for about a full day. Ponder this. The Earth's rotation stopped or slowed. The physical consequences of such an event would be catastrophic. Colossal tsunamis, global earthquakes, everything on the surface scoured clean. But the story doesn't record that. It only records that the day was lengthened. Was this a literal miracle, where the Creator intervened and suspended his own laws? Or was this an intervention of an unimaginable technology? Some theorists speculate about a localized time bubble, a force field enveloping the battle area, slowing the perception of time, or actually warping space-time within a limited radius. Could it be that an advanced civilization, observing the conflict, intervened to ensure a specific outcome? They locked the sunlight in place, or created an illusion of daylight, allowing Joshua to complete his mission. An event described as, there has been no day like it before or since. A voice from the heavens. An army erased in the night. A day unnaturally prolonged. 3 stories. 3 events that defy comprehension. Are they pure miracles, or are they evidence of visitations, of interventions that our ancestors could only describe in the language of the divine? Our journey has only just begun. The ancient texts hide stranger things still. From battles that shook the cosmos, we delve into personal experiences, fated encounters between man and the unexplainable. Our journey now leaves the battlefield for the dark heart of the ocean, and then reaches for the sacred mountains, where the line between heaven and earth seems to dissolve. Listen to the roar of a storm. On the Mediterranean, a ship is being torn apart by savage waves. The crew is in panic, and they believe one man on board has angered the gods. That man is Jonah, a prophet fleeing from his mission. To save the ship, he is thrown into the sea. He sinks down into the cold darkness. But death does not come. Instead, the Bible writes, "The Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah." Imagine that. Not a quick death, but an imprisonment. Jonah awakens. He is in the fish's belly for 3 days and 3 nights. He prays, he reflects, and then that great fish brings him to shore and vomited him out onto dry land. Tradition sees this as a miracle of repentance and mercy, but this story, when read closely, raises strange questions. A great fish. The original text does not say whale or shark, just a giant sea creature. How could a human being survive for 3 days in the airless, acidic environment of a stomach? The ancient contact hypothesis proposes another idea. Was great fish the only description for an ancient person seeing a machine? Something capable of diving deep underwater, moving with speed and having a hollow chamber inside? A submarine? Imagine Jonah being swallowed by a metallic, cold object, not flesh. He is taken into a space he cannot understand. For him, there was no other word in his vocabulary to describe this experience except a great fish sent by God. 3 days of confinement, not inside a creature, but inside a technology millennia beyond his time. From the abyss of the sea, we rise to the sky. 40 days after his resurrection, Jesus stands with his disciples on the Mount of Olives. This is the final moment of parting. He gives them their final instructions. And then a miracle happens before their very eyes. The Bible does not say he vanished. It does not say he flew up by his own power. The text states clearly, after he said these things, he was taken up while they were watching, and a cloud received him out of their sight. A cloud. This was not a white, fluffy cloud drifting in the sky. In the Bible, the cloud, or Shekinah, is often the symbol of the tangible presence, the glory of God. It was the cloud that led the Israelites in the desert, the cloud that rested on the tabernacle. It is a sign of power. But here, it performs a specific action. It took him away. It functions like a vehicle. Theologians understand this as the return to heaven, his enthronement. But the lens of the ancient hypothesis focuses on the mechanics of the event. What did the disciples witness? A beam of light enveloping him? Or a solid, glowing object that they could only describe as a cloud of glory? Was this a form of teleportation? A spatial portal? Or, as some speculate, a transport vehicle that descended from the sky, enveloped him, and took him up at an impossible speed until it was just a pinpoint of light, and then gone. They stood there, gazing into the empty sky, trying to comprehend an event beyond all human experience. And finally, we return to another mountain, a mountain of fire and thunder, Sinai. The leader Moses was on the summit for 40 days, speaking directly with an entity who called himself I am that I am. When he came back down carrying the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, something had changed. The people saw him and they recoiled in terror. The book of Exodus describes, the skin of Moses' face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. This light was not a gentle halo. It was too bright, too frightening. It did not fade. It was so strong that Moses had to put a veil over his face whenever he spoke to the people. He would only remove the veil when he returned to speak with God. The traditional explanation is that this was a reflection of God's glory, a tangible holiness. But if looked at from another angle, what did Moses come into contact with on Mount Sinai? The summit was described as covered in smoke and fire, trembling violently. He had entered the center of an extremely powerful energy phenomenon. Could this glory be a form of energy we do not yet understand? Some have theorized about radiation. Contact with a powerful energy source can cause physical changes. But the story describes light, not sickness. Did Moses stand too close to an alien energy source, an advanced machine, a reactor? His radiant face, so terrifying that others dared not look at it, became physical, tangible proof of an encounter not of this world. A man who survived inside a technological fish, a man taken away by a cloud, and a man who bore on his face the light of an unexplainable energy source. These stories, what are they telling us? Are they merely metaphors for faith? Or are they the distorted memories of a technology that our ancestors could only call divine? We have witnessed the glorious light, a terrifying glory, so radiant it had to be hidden behind a veil. The face of Moses was a tangible testament to an encounter with a great energy source on Mount Sinai. But sacred history did not stop there. Centuries later, another mountain became the stage for an even more shocking event, an event that was not just a reflection, but an explosion of that light source itself. Jesus took his 3 closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a high mountain, far from the noisy world below. And there, in the silence of the summit, he transfigured before their eyes. The Bible tried its best to describe the indescribable. His face, they recounted, shone like the sun. Imagine that. Not a warm halo. It was the intensity of a star. The light did not just surround him, it emanated from him. His clothes, the text writes, became white as the light, a pure, dazzling white that no launderer on earth could bleach. He became an entity of pure energy. But the event didn't stop. Suddenly, appearing beside him were 2 great figures from Israel's history, Moses, the lawgiver, and Elijah, the great prophet. They were there, tangible, and talking with Jesus. 2 figures dead for hundreds, thousands of years, now standing on a mountaintop, conversing with a man glowing like the sun. Where did they come from? And then, like a refrain in these strange events, a bright cloud overshadowed them. The cloud again, not a rain cloud, a bright cloud. It obscured their vision, and from within that cloud, a voice boomed, just like the voice at the Jordan River. "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." The disciples fell face down on the ground, terrified. When they dared to look up, everything was gone. Only Jesus remained, in his normal form. What are we to make of a story like this? Theology calls this the Transfiguration, a glimpse of divine nature. But what if we listen with a different ear? What did 3 terrified witnesses see? A controlled energy activation? Was the light, like the sun, a powerful energy field? And Moses and Elijah? Were they projected images like modern holographic technology? Or were they time travelers, brought to that moment from their own eras? The bright cloud once again acted as a vehicle or an energy source, concealing what was truly happening inside and amplifying a purposeful voice, an event designed to impress, to confirm, and to be etched into human memory. From the blinding light of the Transfiguration, we move to another encounter, described in almost technical detail. The prophet Daniel was standing by the bank of the great Tigris River. He looked up, and he saw a man. But this was no ordinary man. Daniel's description is like a technical report of an entity he absolutely could not comprehend. Listen closely. A man dressed in linen, a precious, pure fabric. His waist was belted with the finest gold of Upaz. This is the attire of royalty or of high status. But that is where all similarity ends. Daniel described his body. His body, he wrote, was like beryl. Beryl is a gemstone, often green or blue and translucent. This person's body glowed from within, as if made of a luminescent stone. His face, Daniel continued, like lightning. Not the sun, but lightning, a sudden, brilliant, and powerful electrical discharge. His eyes, he said, were like flaming torches. They didn't reflect light. They were the source, two focused beams of energy. His arms and legs, and this is the most incredible detail, like the gleam of burnished bronze, not flesh, not bone, but metal, or some similar material, polished and radiant. And finally, his voice was like the sound of a multitude, not the voice of one person, but the sound of thousands speaking at once. A multi-frequency, resonant sound, heavy with authority. Let's piece it together. A linen garment, a glowing, translucent body, a face emitting lightning, fiery eyes, limbs of gleaming metal, an amplified, synthesized voice. Is this an angel? Or is this the most accurate description an ancient person could give of an entity? Wearing a high-tech suit, a space suit, a battle armor, a containment suit. Eyes like torches. Was it a visor, a pair of glowing goggles? Limbs like burnished bronze? The outer shell of the suit? Face like lightning? An energy field around the helmet? And voice like a multitude? An external speaker system? A translator? This entity then revealed to Daniel complex prophecies about the future of empires. This was not a vague phantom. This was a messenger, an information bringer, possessing a physical form that was both terrifying and bizarre. Two encounters, one on a mountaintop, one by a riverbank, both involving blinding light, entities not of this world, and messages that shape the future. Are we reading spiritual metaphors, or detailed reports of a technology beyond our imagination? We have journeyed through glowing mountaintops and riverbanks that witnessed entities of metal. We have heard voices echoing from the heavens. Now, in the final part of our journey, we will look up, not just at the sky, but at the very throne of the gods. We will behold the chariots of heaven and the messengers of terrifying form. Let's begin inside a holy temple, where the prophet Isaiah is deep in a soul-shaking vision. He wrote, "I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted." This was not a simple chair. It was high and exalted, filling the entire temple. It was a massive structure, and around it were the strangest entities ever recorded. They were called the seraphim. The Bible describes them in detail. Each one had 6 wings. Stop there. 6 wings. Is this a biological description or a metaphor? With 2 wings, they covered their faces, as if not daring to look at the brilliant energy source on the throne. With 2 wings, they covered their feet, as if hiding a part of their bodies. And with 2 wings, they were flying. They were not just standing still. They were hovering. They were in motion. And when they spoke, the foundations of the threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. a great throne, 6-winged creatures hovering, a sound so powerful it shook the architecture, and smoke. For thousands of years, this has been the image of heaven, of divine majesty. But the ancient contact theory poses a different question. Was Isaiah standing inside a massive spacecraft? Was the throne the command chair, the control center of a great machine? And the 6-winged seraphim? Were wings the only way Isaiah could describe propulsion systems, mechanical limbs, or parts of a high-tech suit? The sound that shook the foundations. Was it the engine starting up? And the smoke? Was it vapor, exhaust, or a cooling system in operation? Was Isaiah brought into the control center of a machine, or the throne room of God himself? From Isaiah's vision, we come to another equally detailed vision. The prophet John, exiled on the island of Patmos, was given a glimpse of the future. He wrote, "After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven." A door in heaven. A physical, specific image. Not the sky parting clouds, but a doorway, an entrance. And then he heard the voice I had first heard, speaking to me like a trumpet. That sound again. Not a human voice, but a mechanical, amplified sound, resonant like brass. The voice commanded, "Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this." Immediately John said, he was in the Spirit, and he saw a throne set in heaven and one seated on the throne. Once again, a throne, a center of power. Ancient astronaut theorists ask, what was the door in heaven? Was it a portal, a dimensional gateway, just activated? Was the voice like a trumpet, a communication system, transmitting from an orbiting ship? And when John was in the Spirit, was he experiencing a trance, or was he literally transported, lifted from the ground through that door, and inside a massive structure he could only describe as heaven? Inside he saw a control room, a command bridge, which he, with his limited vocabulary, could only describe as a throne, surrounded by lights, thunder, and strange creatures. From the great chariots in the sky, we return to Earth for one final encounter. It was a dark time. A woman named Manoah, who was barren. One day, an entity appeared before her. The Bible calls it the angel of the Lord. But listen to how she described it to her husband. She did not say, "I saw a beautiful angel with white wings." She ran terrified and said, "A man of God came to me. His appearance was like the appearance of an angel of God. Very terrifying." Very terrifying. Why terrifying? Throughout the Bible, when angels appear, the first human reaction is terror. They have to reassure, do not be afraid. What was it about these messengers that caused such instinctive dread? Was it the holy aura, or was it their inhumanity? Was this woman facing an entity not of this earth? A tall creature, perhaps wearing a strange suit, a breathing apparatus, or having eyes that were too large, too different. Our origins have posed the question, was this angel of the Lord a being possessing advanced technology? Was the terrifying appearance the result of a technology that ancient observers could not understand? A messenger appears, gives precise biological instructions on how to conceive and raise a child, Samson, and then vanishes. A deliberate intervention. Our journey through the ancient text tonight has ended. We have gone from the rivers where the sky opened to the battlefields where time stopped. We have descended into the ocean depths inside a mysterious fish and ascended to mountaintops where men glowed like the sun. We have seen entities of metal and fire and great chariots hidden in the clouds. These are stories of faith, but they are also witness reports. Tonight's narration does not seek to replace your faith, but only to awaken your curiosity, to have you listen to these stories with new ears. As you drift off to sleep, let your mind wander. Ask yourself, what if the greatest miracles were actually the traces of a great technology? What if the angels and the gods were travelers? And what if our history, our most sacred history, is inextricably linked to the stars? In the quiet corners of history, hidden within unrecognized ancient texts, exists a story, a revelation, that challenges our understanding of human origins and the skies above. This is not a story told by campfire. This is a legacy recorded in the Ethiopian Book of Revelation. An ancient text, though removed from many canons, holds a sacred place in some of the oldest faith traditions. This story tells of entities called the Watchers. The account begins long ago when 200 angels, a group known as the Watchers, were sent to Earth. Their mission was simple: to observe, protect, and watch over nascent humanity. They were the shepherds of heaven, watching from above. But observation soon turned to desire. They looked down and saw the beauty of the daughters of men, and there, on a mountaintop, they made a fateful pact. They swore to descend together, against the sacred command to take mortal wives for themselves. This act of defiance planted a seed that would change the earth forever. From the forbidden union of angels and humans, a new race was born. They were called the Nephilim. In the texts, they are described as illustrious giants, beings of extraordinary power, but their legacy was not greatness, but chaos. The Nephilim were an anomaly, a break in the natural order. They consumed Earth's resources with insatiable greed, and when food was no longer enough, they turned on humanity itself, and even on each other. Violence and chaos engulfed the land. Some modern theorists, reading these lines, have posed a disturbing question. Was the birth of the Nephilim an unauthorized genetic experiment? An early attempt to change or direct human evolution? But the Watchers did not only bring sin, they also brought knowledge. The Book of Enoch details how they taught humanity secrets not meant for mortal minds. They taught us the art of metallurgy, how to forge swords and shields. They revealed the mysteries of cosmology, the workings of the sun and moon. They imparted knowledge of advanced agriculture, of sorcery, and of how to read the stars, astrology. Pause for a moment. These skills, metallurgy, astronomy, organized agriculture, are the very pillars of civilization. Were they the result of natural human evolution, or were they a boost, a technological gift, from superior entities who violated the core rule of non-intervention? Amidst this world sinking into darkness, one man walked in righteousness. His name was Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. Enoch was not just a devout man, he was chosen. And then, the unthinkable happened. The angels took Enoch on a journey, not a normal death, but an ascension. The text describes him being lifted from earth, not by wings, but by a whirlwind, an unidentified energy source, taking him into the heavens. Enoch's account of what he saw is astonishing. He described passing through different gates or heavens, each more brilliant and terrifying than the last. He saw houses or palaces emitting blinding light built from indescribable materials, glowing crystals. Finally, he reached a structure of impossible design, a place with walls like living crystal, floors of fire, and a burning throne. Is this the poetic language of a mystic trying to describe God? Or is this the attempt of a prehistoric man trying to describe a technology far beyond his comprehension. Were the gates dimensions? Could the radiant crystal palaces be a spaceship? A galactic station? A room lit by advanced artificial lighting systems? The purpose of God, according to the text, was for Enoch to witness the greatness of the cosmos and the dwelling place of the fallen watchers, so he could bring back their judgment. After completing his mission, Enoch was returned to earth. He returned with knowledge, with warnings, and with a story that would be retold for millennia. This story, of a man taken by beings from the sky, shown the wonders of the cosmos, and given a message to share with humanity. It strangely mirrors the accounts of modern contactees, those who claim to have met extraterrestrial beings. If viewed through this lens, Enoch could be considered one of the first recorded contactees, humanity's first ambassador, chosen by a higher civilization to receive knowledge. Enoch's story is not a solitary echo in ancient history. When we listen more closely, we begin to hear similar stories, repeated in cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. From India to Egypt, from Greece to the Americas, stories of gods from the stars bringing knowledge and flying in fiery chariots persist. Could these be whispers of the same single truth? The question of whether Enoch was a contactee opens a vast corridor echoing throughout the annals of humanity. If we accept the possibility that ancient texts are not just mythology, but memory, sincere attempts to record extraordinary events in the language of their time, then the story of the Watchers is not an isolated incident. It is a theme, a recurring motif across the entire cultural tapestry of our planet. Let us turn our attention eastward, to the Indian subcontinent, home to one of the oldest and most complex collections of religious texts in the world. In the great epics of Hinduism, like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, we find astonishingly detailed descriptions of flying machines called Vimanas. These are not vague metaphors. The texts describe them as celestial chariots, machines capable of moving at incredible speeds, hovering in the sky, and even traveling between different kingdoms or locust worlds. They were used by gods and kings in times of peace and war. Consider the story in the Mahabharata of King Salva. He possessed a Vimana named Sauba, a flying city that could move at will. The text describes it as capable of becoming invisible and reappearing in different locations instantly. Invisibility, instantaneous movement. Are these ancient descriptions echoes of modern UFO reports, of objects moving in ways that defy our known laws of physics? And it wasn't just transportation. The Mahabharata also speaks of weapons of unimaginable destruction. In Canto 197, a weapon called the Brahmastra is launched. The description is chilling. Suddenly, the text reads, "All light vanished. Powerful winds began to blow. The sky became clear and blazed with light." A loss of light, followed by a blinding flash and violent winds. Is this poetic language, or a witness's attempt to describe the horrific devastation of a high-tech weapon, possibly even an ancient nuclear weapon? This tradition continues in Buddhism. Buddhist texts speak of devas, celestial beings who live in different realms of existence. They are said to possess advanced abilities and frequently intervene in human affairs. In sutras like the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha and Bodhisattvas are described as moving through the sky, not by walking, but by flying on brilliant halos or streams of light. They are not mere spirits, they are conscious beings, moving from realm to realm, bringing wisdom and sometimes intervention. Now, let us journey west to the hot sands of ancient Egypt. This civilization was obsessed with the stars. Their entire mythology was tied to the sky. One of the most powerful and common symbols in Egyptian art is the winged sun disk. This symbol represented the great sun god, Ra. It is carved on temples, tombs, and papyri. It is always above, a circular, glowing disk, flanked by protective wings. Was it merely an artistic symbol for the sun? Or did the ancient Egyptians, looking up at the daytime sky, witness aerial phenomena they couldn't explain? Disk-shaped, flying objects, which they attributed to their most powerful god, Ra, traveling in his celestial chariot. From India to Egypt, a picture begins to emerge. The gods were not just in the sky, they came from the sky. They traveled in fiery chariots, glowing disks, and flying cities. And as we cross the Atlantic to the New World, we find these stories do not stop. The civilizations of the Americas, the Maya, the Aztec, also looked to the sky in awe. And they too had stories to tell. Stories of winged gods and the knowledge they brought from the stars. As we journey through the jungles of Mesoamerica, we find ourselves standing in the ruins of the great pre-Columbian civilizations, the Maya and the Aztec, master astronomers, architects of great cities. They also had gods who came from heaven. Perhaps none is more famous than Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent. He was a central figure in these cultures, but he was not a fierce god of war or a capricious weather god. He was revered as a bringer of knowledge. Quetzalcoatl was said to have come from the sky, bringing humanity the gifts of civilization, the calendar, the art of writing, and knowledge of agriculture. Legend says he promised to return, a promise that profoundly shaped their history when they faced conquerors from across the sea. But his legacy isn't just a promise. It is also written in the sacred text of the Maya, the Popol Vuh. This book of creation tells of the first people, who were made by the gods. The Popol Vuh describes the creator gods, who came from the sky, granting these first humans the ability to see everything, far and near, even things hidden in the cosmos. But the gods feared that humans had become too much like them. So they blew mist into their eyes, diminishing our vision and our understanding. Is this a parable about human hubris? Or is it a distorted memory of an intervention, a deliberate adjustment to limit a potential gifted to us by our creators from the stars? The texts are one thing, but what happens when the Earth, the planet itself, bears seemingly unexplainable marks? Let's fly south to the arid highlands of Peru. Stretched across the desert is one of the world's greatest archaeological mysteries, the Nazca lines. Hundreds of giant geoglyphs, animals, plants, and complex geometric shapes etched into the ground with incredible precision. They are too large to be fully recognized from the ground. They can only be seen from above. Who were they made for? Among these countless figures, one is particularly curious. Located on a hillside near Palpa, it was discovered in the 1920s. Locals call it El Astronauta, the astronaut. It is a stylized humanoid figure with a large head, big round eyes, and seemingly waving to the sky. Is it an image of a local deity? Or is it a description, crude but clear, of a visitor not of this world? A being wearing something like a spacesuit? And this imprint isn't limited to Peru. Half a world away, in Italy's Val Camonica Valley, lies one of the largest collections of prehistoric rock carvings in the world. These images date back thousands of years, spanning from the Stone Age to the Iron Age. They depict daily life, hunting, agriculture, rituals. But interspersed among these familiar scenes are other images, images that perplex. Some researchers point to humanoid figures wearing what appear to be strange suits. Their heads are encased in what look like helmets. From these helmets, rays or antennae radiate. Mainstream archaeologists explain these as shamans in ceremonial dress or warriors with stylized weapons. But others see a disturbing resemblance. They see images strangely similar to modern astronauts in spacesuits. Were these Bronze Age artists trying to record an encounter with beings they could not understand? Beings who arrived in strange, glowing suits from the sky? From the Watchers of Enoch to the Vimanas of India, to the astronaut in the Peruvian desert, and the strange rock figures in Italy. Ancient history seems filled with echoes, hints of visitations, encounters that were mistaken for gods, recorded in myth and carved into stone. For centuries, these stories remained myth. These images remained art. But as we step out of the shadows of antiquity and into more recent recorded history, these encounters do not seem to stop. They just change their form. And on an April morning in 1561, over the German city of Nuremberg, something happened. An event so strange, so widely witnessed, that it could not be dismissed as mere myth. It was recorded as current news. Dawn, April 14, 1561, in the city of Nuremberg, Germany. The citizens who woke early did not witness a normal sunrise. Instead, they became witnesses to one of the strangest and most well-documented aerial events in history. A woodcut broadsheet printed shortly after chronicled the scene. It was not a dream. It was not mythology. It was a news event. The witnesses, terrified, reported the sky was filled with objects. They described spheres, cylinders, crosses, and large discs, blood red, black, and blue. These objects seemed to be engaged in a chaotic aerial battle. They darted about, moved erratically, and then, after an hour of intense combat, they reportedly fell to the earth outside the city, rising up in a great smoke. In the context of the 16th century Europe, deeply dominated by religion, the only explanation was that this was a divine omen, a warning from God. But let's look back at this event with 21st century eyes. Hundreds of witnesses described disc-shaped and cylindrical objects battling in the sky. Today, military reports of UFOs, or UAPs, often describe spherical objects, and, notably, cubes inside a translucent sphere, shapes precisely mentioned in the Nuremberg broadsheet. Was this a rare atmospheric phenomenon, or did Nuremberg accidentally record a conflict between forces they could not comprehend? The Nuremberg event was not unique. It was just the most blatant. When we look at the art of the past, especially Renaissance art, we find anomalies hidden in plain sight. Consider the painting The Annunciation with Saint Emilius, painted in 1486 by Carlo Crivelli, a classic religious artwork. We see the angel Gabriel announcing the news to the Virgin Mary. But look up at the sky. It is not a mere divine ray. It is a perfect, disc-shaped object, hovering in a swirl of clouds. From this disc, a thin, laser-like beam of brilliant yellow light shines straight down, passes through the wall, and strikes Mary's head. Art historians explain this as a symbol of the Holy Spirit descending. But why choose a flying disc, a machine, to represent the divine? Was Crivelli, or his patron, seeing something similar, an unidentified flying object, and incorporating it into the religious iconography of the day? Let's move to 1710, with The Baptism of Christ by Aert de Gelder. Again, a familiar biblical scene. But in the sky, where we would normally expect a dove symbolizing the Holy Spirit, we see a disc-shaped object, hovering, shining 4 powerful beams of light down on Jesus. It looks more like a spacecraft than a celestial miracle. Perhaps most famous is the Madonna with Saint Giovannino from the 15th century. The Virgin Mary is humbly looking down, but in the background, over her shoulder, there is something. A dark, oval-shaped object appears to be hovering in the sky. It's painted in detail, and below it, on a rocky outcrop, a man is standing, shielding his eyes, with his dog, both staring intently up at the strange object. Why would the artist add this mundane and distracting detail to a sacred scene, unless he was painting a familiar sight in the skies of Renaissance Florence? In the year 1600, Ventura Salimbeni painted the Glorification of the Eucharist. In the top center, between God the Father and God the Son, is a large spherical object. It has a metallic appearance with lens-like details and 2 objects that look exactly like antennae. At the time, it was understood as the celestial sphere, a symbol of God's universe. But to a modern eye, it looks astonishingly like the first Sputnik satellite, a random coincidence of religious symbolism, or a technological memory preserved in art. These stories are not just confined to art. In the 17th century, the chronicler Juan de Gildas recorded a strange story from fishermen off the coast of Ireland. They reported seeing a floating island offshore. It didn't just drift. It moved with purpose. Against the wind and tide, it was shrouded in thick fog, occasionally appearing and then vanishing again. And finally, in 1917, at Fatima, Portugal, not a painting, not a second-hand story, but an event witnessed by 70,000 people. They gathered to await a foretold miracle. They were not disappointed. According to countless witness accounts, the sun danced. They described the sun spinning, throwing off brilliant colors, and then suddenly plummeting toward the earth in a zigzag pattern before returning to its place. The Catholic Church declared it the miracle of the sun, a divine intervention. Skeptics suggest mass hysteria or an atmospheric phenomenon. But what about a third possibility? Did 70,000 people witness a massive, glowing, high-tech object performing impossible aerial maneuvers, a display of power that their minds could only interpret as the sun falling? From Nuremberg to Fatima, from the stones of Italy to the ancient texts of India, history seems to be fractured by moments where the impossible happened. These phenomena seem to continue even in our own time. Governments around the world are now openly admitting the existence of aerial objects they cannot identify. This raises one final, most profound question. If they have been here since antiquity, if they have watched the rise and fall of civilizations, then what do they want? In the infinite ocean of the cosmos, on a pale blue island floating in the darkness, a spark of consciousness ignited. That is us, humanity, a strange species capable of contemplating the stars, creating art, and wondering about our place in the vast universe. Our history, spanning millennia, is an epic of rise and fall, of war and peace, of ignorance and enlightenment. But is this entire incredible journey just a grand accident, a lucky break of blind evolution? Or is there an invisible hand guiding it? Let us step back to the dawn of civilization. When humanity was still a young species, taking its first steps out of the caves, vulnerable and bewildered by the world. If at that time a more advanced, more ancient civilization existed in the universe, how would they have seen us? They might have seen us as a new, promising species in need of direction and care. The first moral codes appeared almost simultaneously in many cultures. The Ten Commandments, the teachings of the great sages. These universal ethical and moral principles, are they merely the product of human intellect trying to create order from chaos? Or were they carefully orchestrated lessons? Basic programs seeded by cosmic teachers, intended to establish the foundation for our social development. Their role may not have stopped at seeding. Imagine them as preservers, guardians of cosmic history. If humanity is part of a larger cosmic ecosystem, then cosmic laws might exist. Fundamental principles to prevent chaos, to stop young civilizations from self-destructing before they can mature. And these advanced civilizations, with their deep understanding of the universe, act as the silent protectors of those laws. They ensure that our historical trajectory stays on course, even without our knowledge. But there is another theory, colder and more disturbing. What if we are an experiment? A large-scale genetic, cultural, or social experiment. Every rise and fall, every conflict, every leap in our consciousness is meticulously observed, recorded, and analyzed. In this scenario, the appearance of spiritual leaders or powerful dynasties is not random, but carefully planned variables. Deliberate interventions to see how this experiment will react, to push our development in specific directions. Or perhaps their purpose is more benevolent. It is to protect humanity. An advanced civilization may have seen thousands of species like us rise and self-destruct. They might intervene at the most critical moments in history, the moments we stand on the precipice. Think of the world wars, the pandemics that nearly wiped us out. Did we overcome them on our own? Or was there a subtle intervention, a gentle, invisible push, stopping us from pressing the self-destruct button? They protect us from external threats and, more importantly, protect us from ourselves. Some theorists go even further. They suggest there is a genetic component to this intervention. This hypothesis suggests that advanced civilizations participated in creating specific bloodlines, prophets, royal dynasties, through genetic modification. The purpose? To enhance intelligence, extend lifespan, or implant in us special abilities, the seeds of our next evolution. These are not just wild stories for the night. These are profound questions about the nature of our existence. Are we truly alone on this journey? Or are we a project, a seedling being nurtured, an experiment being observed? And if they have been here for so long, observing and guiding, where are they? Why don't we see them? Perhaps we are looking, but we do not know how to see. If these silent observers have interfered in human history since the dawn of time, how were they seen? When ancient humans looked up at the starry sky, unpolluted by modern light, what did they record? To explore this, we must journey into the worldview of one of the planet's most influential cultures, the ancient Hebrews. Their worldview was unique, starkly different from the polytheistic cultures, worshipping countless gods that surrounded them. For the Hebrews, the universe was seen through a completely different lens, a lens that was theological, ethical, and deeply connected. At the heart of their thought was the belief in a single, omnipotent God, Yahweh. He was not a distant, indifferent deity. He was a personal, intimate God, intervening directly in the history of his people. Every event, whether a drought, a military victory, or the rise of an empire, was seen as part of his grand plan. Obedience brought blessings. Disobedience brought punishment. But what did their universe look like? It is completely alien to us. Ancient texts describe the earth as a flat disk surrounded by water. Above us was a great vault, a solid structure in the sky. The sun, moon, and stars were not distant worlds. They were simply lamps that God had fixed to that vault to illuminate the day and night. In their minds, there was no clear distinction between stars and planets. The concept of interplanetary space, of other galaxies, or extraterrestrial life as we understand it today, was completely non-existent. Now, let's conduct a thought experiment. Let us bring a Hebrew living in the biblical era to the 21st century, and they look up at the sky, seeing an object we call a UFO, a silent metal disk hovering in physically impossible ways, emitting strange beams of light. How would they explain it? They have no vocabulary for spaceship, technology, or alien. Their reaction would almost certainly be religious. Most likely they would not see it as an object or a machine. They would see it as an event, a divine manifestation. There is a crucial Hebrew term, Shekinah. It means the tangible, visible presence, the glory of God Himself. They believed that at critical moments, God could manifest His presence physically. If the object glowed brilliantly, or was accompanied by terrifying phenomena, they would kneel, believing it was the glory of Yahweh descending to deliver a message or execute a judgment. Or they might interpret it as a malach, an angel, a messenger from heaven. Angels in the Bible were often not gentle beings with wings and harps. They were powerful, sometimes terrifying messengers sent to carry out a divine mission or deliver a prophecy. A UFO hovering in the sky might be understood as that messenger's chariot, a vehicle of celestial transport. If the strange object appeared during a time of chaos, like the Babylonian exile, the Hebrew mind would turn to apocalyptic visions. They yearned for God to intervene to restore justice and punish the wicked. Seeing such a strange object in the sky might be seen as a sign, the sign of the end times. It was the beginning of judgment, or even the arrival of the long-awaited Messiah. And if the object emitted a sound, a roar, a hum, or a voice, they would have no doubt. It was the bat coal, the echo from heaven. It was God speaking directly from His throne. To the ancient mind, the universe was not a cold, empty physical space. It was a divine stage. Every unexplained phenomenon was a message, an act of God. This raises a profound question. If they had seen unidentified flying objects in the past, they certainly would have interpreted them through the only religious lens they had. But what if the nature of that intervention has changed? What if the ancient watchers, who actively intervened in antiquity, have now chosen to step back? Why do they seem silent while our modern world is facing global crises? Our history, whether recorded or legendary, is filled with stories of intervention from above. Gods descending from the sky, prophets receiving world-changing messages, civilizations suddenly gaining advanced knowledge of astronomy and architecture. But when we look at our chaotic world today, a world teetering on the brink of self-destruction from nuclear weapons, climate change, and deep division, the sky seems terrifyingly silent. The paradox is this: if an advanced civilization, cosmic watchers, once actively guided or protected us at critical moments in the past, why are they standing by while we play with apocalyptic fire? The first hypothesis, and perhaps the most humanistic, it is a lesson in self-reliance. Perhaps they have intervened enough. They planted the seeds of morality and society. They pushed us in the right direction. But a civilization cannot mature if it is constantly coddled. Like wise parents, they may have decided that it is time for humanity to face its own choices, to learn from its own mistakes, no matter how catastrophic those mistakes might be. They may believe that now we must find the solutions ourselves. The second hypothesis, a common concept in science fiction but incredibly logical, a fundamental ethical principle. Let's call it the non-interference directive. Any civilization advanced enough to travel between the stars has surely also developed a complex ethical system. They may have realized that direct, overt intervention in a younger civilization would have catastrophic consequences. Imagine what would happen if tomorrow a massive spaceship appeared over New York. Religious systems, the bedrock of many societies, would collapse. Political and economic institutions would fall into chaos. A global panic would erupt. Direct intervention might not save us. It might destroy the very social fabric we have spent thousands of years building. This leads to a third, much more subtle possibility. They never left. They just changed their methods. They have abandoned the dramatic miracle displays of antiquity. Instead, they use subtle, almost undetectable methods. They no longer command from a fiery cloud. Instead, they might whisper into the subconscious. A breakthrough idea pops into a scientist's head. A sudden inspiration comes to an artist. A strong moral urge in the heart of a leader. They may be operating on a psychic level, planting seeds of change through key individuals rather than through public edicts. They might be leaking new technological concepts, allowing us to discover them ourselves at just the right time. So, how to explain the thousands of modern UFO sightings? If they are trying to hide, why do we still see them? Perhaps these are their observation vehicles. They are not intervening, but they are watching closely. What we see are just brief glimpses, accidental glitches in their cloaking systems. Or perhaps even these sightings are intentional. They are not clear enough to cause global panic, but frequent enough to slowly prepare us. A decades-long acclimatization process, getting us used to the idea that we are not alone. And finally, there is a dramatic possibility. They are waiting. They might be waiting for a critical moment in our evolution, perhaps the moment we reach a collective consciousness threshold, or when we finally unite as a global species. Or they are waiting for a crisis of the utmost extremity, a moment where our survival is truly, irrecoverably threatened. Only then, when we have reached the end of the line, will they break their silence and intervene. Their silence may not be indifference, but infinite patience. They are giving us every chance to save ourselves. But this poses one final, most profound question. If we misunderstood their actions in the past, mistaking technology for magic, is it possible we are also completely misunderstanding what we are seeing in the present? In our age, we pride ourselves on our understanding. We have decoded the genome, split the atom, and sent robotic probes to the farthest corners of the solar system. We believe we have escaped the shackles of ancient superstition, and we now view the cosmos with logic and science. Despite all this knowledge, the sky remains full of mysteries. Despite all our technology, reports of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, continue to surface, not just from lone witnesses, but from military pilots and the most advanced radar systems. The most popular theory, the hinge for all our speculation, is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. We believe these are spaceships, reconnaissance vehicles from another advanced civilization, coming from a distant planet. This is the most logical explanation, within the framework of our era's understanding. But what if we are again making the same mistake as our ancestors? What if we are also completely misinterpreting what we are seeing? Remember the ancient Hebrews. When faced with a phenomenon they could not explain, they turned to the only lens they had, religion. They saw it as the Shekinah, the glory of God, or an angel, a divine messenger. We, in the 21st century, are also limited by the lens of our own time. We are a civilization of machines, computers, and space travel. So, when we see an unexplained phenomenon in the sky, we don't see angels. We see spaceships and aliens. What if these objects are not objects at all? What if they are not mechanical craft carrying biological beings from another planet, but something far, far stranger? Perhaps they are natural phenomena that our science cannot yet grasp. Maybe they are complex forms of atmospheric plasma, capable of exhibiting a form of intelligence-like behavior. Or they are macroscopic quantum phenomena, ripples from other dimensions temporarily intersecting with our three-dimensional reality. Or an even more radical idea. What if they are related to human consciousness itself? Physical manifestations of our collective psyche, projected onto the sky during times of stress and social upheaval? The truth is, we do not know. We are trapped in our own perception. Our ancestors looked up and saw the chariots of the gods. We look up and see the spaceships of aliens. Perhaps we are both staring at the same great mystery, and both of us are only seeing a tiny fraction of the truth. Perhaps reality is far more complex, profound, and wondrous than anything our ancient religion or our modern science can yet imagine. And as you drift into sleep, floating in the quiet space of your mind, ask yourself what we think we know. Is it truly what is? In the infinite stillness of the night, as the mind gradually settles, we often look up at the sky, a deep black ocean dotted with countless sparkling lights. And in the depths, a question arises. Are we alone? The human mind always yearns to search. We imagine spaceships of gleaming metal crossing the emptiness between the stars. We imagine civilizations with technology beyond all comprehension, aliens. But what if reality is more complex and grand than that? What if, while busily searching for flying saucers, we are missing an even deeper truth? Instead of just the technology of another race, perhaps we should consider phenomena beyond our normal grasp, phenomena related to quantum physics, to parallel dimensions, or even non-physical, interdimensional life forms. It's very possible we are completely misunderstanding the nature of life in the universe. It might exist in countless aspects, countless forms, or be based on fundamental principles entirely different from the life we know. And in that search, we often unconsciously separate the Creator from the universe itself. But just for once, take a deep breath and contemplate another idea. What if this universe itself is God? This is not a new idea. It echoes the ancient philosophy of pantheism, a doctrine holding that God and the all are one. There is no separation. Everything that exists is a part of God. In this majestic model, every star you see, every distant planet, every spiral galaxy, are not dead objects floating in a vacuum. They are part of a single, boundless, and eternal cosmic consciousness. And we, humanity, are just a tiny molecule, a cell in that enormous body. Imagine the universe as a living organism, an entity with its own consciousness and purpose far beyond any human attempt to comprehend. The stars and galaxies could be seen as its internal organs. The laws of physics, from gravity to the laws of thermodynamics, are the natural biological rules operating that massive body. From this perspective, humans and every other life form we might encounter are functioning as cells within this great cosmic organism. Our individual lives, though seemingly small and mundane next to the scale of the cosmos, may be contributing an essential part to its overall health and purpose. Every action, every thought, every emotional vibration is intimately connected, woven into the great cosmic flow of energy. We can use a simple analogy: the human body. Inside you, trillions of cells are living and working. Each cell performs its specific function. A skin cell protects. A blood cell transports oxygen. But not one single cell can perceive the overarching purpose of the entire body. They do not understand love. They cannot imagine dreams or contemplate art. In the same way, humans may be fulfilling their role in the cosmic body without ever fully realizing the grand purpose of the whole. Just as cells are constantly born and die within a living body, humanity also goes through cycles of birth, aging, sickness, and death. But the death of the individual allows a greater consciousness, an invisible life, to continue and evolve. As you drift into sleep tonight, try to feel that you are not separate. You are part of the cosmic breath, part of the cosmic mind. You are an expression of that single divine existence itself. We are not strangers looking at the universe. We are the universe experiencing itself. As we contemplate a great and living universe, a vast cosmic organism, another, closer and more profound question begins to arise. What is humanity's place in it? And what is the role of God, the Creator, in this cosmic story? For billions of people on this planet, the answer lies within the framework of faith. In Christian doctrine, for example, God is the Almighty Creator, the source of all things. The Bible describes that He created all things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Visible is our blue planet, is the sand, the sea, this very body. But invisible? Is that just angels and spiritual realms? Or in His infinity, did He plant the seeds of life in distant worlds unseen by the naked eye? If the universe is endless, if there are trillions of galaxies, would His creation be limited to just one tiny speck of dust that we call Earth? Or did He create countless other life forms on countless planets in countless solar systems? The Bible does not directly address extraterrestrial life, but it also does not deny it. And right here, in the stillness of the night, a great theological paradox emerges, a question that shakes the foundations of belief. The pillar of the Christian faith is the story of redemption. Jesus Christ, believed to be the only Son of God, became incarnate as a man on this planet. He came to earth, bore the sins of humanity, and through His resurrection brought salvation. This is a historical event, a specific divine act intended for humankind. So, what happens to the sentient beings on a planet millions of light years away? Do they need salvation? And if so, how? Does the sacrificial act on earth have any meaning for them? Theologians have pondered this for centuries, and they offer several astonishing possibilities. One possibility is Christ's act on earth was not just local. It was a cosmic event, a single act at a single time, but with an eternal and universal resonance, powerful enough to redeem every sentient soul in the entire universe, wherever they may be, whatever form they may take. Another, even bolder idea is proposed. Could there be multiple incarnations? Just as He came to humanity in the form of Jesus, perhaps he also came to other civilizations in forms appropriate to their own history, biology, and spiritual needs. One divine truth, but manifested in countless different ways, suited to each of his children scattered among the stars. And there is a third, perhaps most optimistic possibility. What if the fall was humanity's own unique tragedy? What if, out there, in the vast cosmos, exist races, intelligent life forms, that never lost their original connection to the Creator? They may be living in a state of perpetual grace, a harmony that humanity has lost, and therefore, they simply have no need for redemption. These are not just philosophical speculations. Even the Vatican Observatory, one of the oldest astronomical institutes in the world, is actively engaging in this dialogue. Their theologians and scientists have publicly stated that we cannot and should not place limits on God's creative freedom. They remind us, look at the earth. Look at the millions of species, from the smallest bacterium to the great blue whale. If God loves diversity so much on one planet, why would we assume he would stop there? The diversity of life on Earth may be just a sketch for a far greater creative symphony throughout the entire cosmos. Let us return to our most ancient scriptures. When reading these stories again through the lens of the cosmic age, certain events begin to emerge in an entirely new, mysterious light. The wondrous events recorded in the Bible, fiery chariots in the sky, pillars of fire guiding in the desert, voices commanding from glowing clouds. For millennia, we accepted them as pure miracles, direct interventions of a divine, non-physical hand. But in the modern world, a world of jet aircraft, space travel, and quantum physics, these descriptions evoke other images. The unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, that we see today, are they spaceships from another world? Or are they time travelers from humanity's own future? Or even, are they manifestations of a non-physical intelligent life form, or an ancient civilization sharing this planet with us? And the most audacious question is, what if some of the events in the Bible were not miracles in the supernatural sense, but technological interventions? What if the fiery chariot of the prophet Ezekiel was not a metaphor, but a clumsy description, in the language of the Bronze Age, of a complex machine, an advanced vehicle? If we accept this hypothesis, even for just a moment, does it shatter faith? Does acknowledging that the messengers might be physical entities from the stars diminish the sanctity of the message they brought? The answer is perhaps no. On the contrary, it might open a door to a deeper, broader understanding of God. If God is the creator of the entire universe, then he did not only create humanity. He may have created countless other civilizations, and perhaps he acts in the universe through those civilizations. These advanced beings who crossed the oceans of space to visit a nascent Earth, they would not be gods, they would be brothers. Cosmic brothers, also children of the same Creator, also part of the grand plan. For many believers, this perspective does not weaken faith at all. It strengthens it. It transforms God from a deity of earth alone into a creator of the cosmos, a great consciousness with arms wide enough to embrace billions of worlds, billions of races. In this context, the commandment to love thy neighbor takes on an entirely new meaning. Our neighbor may not just be the person in the house next door or in the country across the border. Our neighbor might be on the next planet. This is the very core of a cosmic Christianity, a system of faith that is not afraid to look at the sky, a system of faith that not only accepts, but welcomes the possibility of life elsewhere. It inspires us. It compels us to explore, because every new planet we find, every new life form we meet, is a new page in God's infinite book of creation. Every scientific discovery is a sacred act of contemplation. It erases the artificial boundary between science and spirituality, because both, after all, are paths to seek the truth. An astronomer looking through a telescope and a monk sitting in meditation, both are trying to decipher the same great mystery. Both are listening to the whispers of the universe. Let your mind drift even further, beyond the solar system, past the spiral arms of the Milky Way, to a distant future or an unimaginable present. If our descendants, or if we ourselves, one day meet these cosmic civilizations, these cosmic brothers who have existed for millions of years, what would their religion, their spirituality look like? What if the core principles that Jesus taught on earth, love, compassion, forgiveness, altruism, are not human values alone, but are cosmic principles? What if they are fundamental laws of consciousness, echoing throughout the universe, sprouting in any intelligent society, regardless of their biological form? We might see a faith expressed not through words, but through vibration. Imagine a civilization that has evolved beyond physical language. They communicate telepathically. To them, love and compassion are not abstract concepts, but tangible energy flows. Their sacred rituals might be rituals of empathetic connection, great gatherings where millions of minds merge into one, not to pray, but to share, to experience each other's pain, to heal one another with pure waves of forgiveness, and to collectively feel life on an indescribably deep level. For another race, perhaps a race with a hive consciousness, deeply connected to their planet, their spirituality might be absolute harmony with nature. Instead of building cathedrals of stone, they regard their very ecosystem as a living sanctuary. Their rituals might be acts of co-creation with the planet. They might sing crystals into existence, whisper to the flow of magma, or hold great ceremonies to channel life energy into their ecosystem, as an act of gratitude and reverence for the life that sustains them. They do not worship God as an external entity. They live with God in every leaf, every speck of dust. And if we go even further, to Type 3 civilizations, civilizations that can harness the energy of an entire galaxy, their devotion would be on a cosmic scale. Through the art of mastering energy and matter, they could create great spiritual architecture, not of brick and mortar, but of the stars themselves. Imagine them using cosmic dust and starlight to sculpt cathedral nebulae, enormous clouds of gas glowing with brilliant colors, shaped into complex symbols of unity, sacred artworks visible from thousands of light years away. They might create rivers of light, pure energy streams connecting star systems, not just as physical pathways, but as symbolic pilgrimage routes, leading to interstellar meditation centers. And perhaps their highest ritual is the supernova festival. They might predict and even manage the life cycle of a star. When a massive star reaches the end of its life, they would celebrate the event. They transform the supernova explosion into a temporary cathedral of light, a brilliant memorial to the eternal cycle of life and death, an event that happens only once in millions of years. a spectacular display of existence's fleeting beauty. And maybe, by mastering gravity, they create covenant black holes, spiritual energy centers, where the consciousness of countless races can gather, like rivers flowing into a single ocean of consciousness. Perhaps, right now, as you are listening, we are seeing their traces, the great structures in the night sky, the complex nebulae, the perfectly arranged star clusters. Might not be random. They might be imprints, messages, left from millions of years ago. Great sacred paintings drawn on the canvas of the cosmos. A message of love from our brothers among the stars, sent to us. Or perhaps they are still out there. They are watching us with infinite patience. They are waiting for us, humanity, to discover the truth for ourselves, that all of us, no matter our form, no matter where we are in this universe, are one. In the quiet darkness of an October evening in 1948, the sky above the plains of North Dakota suddenly became the stage for an unprecedented event. George F. Gorman, a seasoned combat veteran of World War II, was conducting a routine training flight. He fought to protect the region's security, but on that fateful night, his opponent was not a familiar foe. It was an unidentified object. It emitted a strange, eerie light, coupled with bursts of acceleration that defied all laws of physics. It dragged Gorman into an unbelievable chase, a true dogfight, between a human being and something that seemed not of this earth. That haunting 27-minute confrontation left pilot Gorman with lingering questions that would never be fully answered. What really happened that night? What was the object that George F. Gorman encountered? A secret military technology? Or something more frightening, more alien? To understand the shock of this encounter, we must go back in time, back to the context of the early 1940s. This was a period of explosive growth in reports of unidentified flying objects. Throughout World War II, both Allied and Axis pilots frequently recounted stories of the appearance of strange balls of light, dubbed Foo Fighters. They flew at high speeds, maneuvered with extraordinary agility, and seemed to constantly shadow the bomber squadrons. Initially, each side believed this was a secret weapon of the enemy, but after the war ended, the files of both sides were opened, and an astonishing truth was revealed. No nation possessed such technology. The Foo Fighters phenomenon became a great mystery, planting the first seeds of theories about uninvited guests from space. Along with the development of aviation technology and early space programs, reports of strange objects also increased significantly. The most famous, and perhaps most shocking, was the UFO event at Roswell, New Mexico, in July 1947. This incident captured immense public and media attention, giving birth to a host of conspiracy theories about extraterrestrial life that still echo to this day. Faced with this wave of public confusion and curiosity, the United States Air Force could not sit idly by. Also in 1947, they launched a series of programs to understand unidentified aerial phenomena. First was Project Sign in 1947, followed by Project Grudge in 1949. And finally, in 1952, the most famous program, Project Blue Book. The official purpose of Blue Book was to determine if these things from space were a threat to national security. In total, 12,618 UFO reports were collected and analyzed. Most, according to the official conclusion, were dismissed as misidentifications of natural phenomena, like weather balloons, meteors, or conventional aircraft. One of the most important figures in the development of Project Blue Book was Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. As the project director, he researched and investigated countless reports of flying objects and beings not from Earth. But for Ruppelt himself, one of the most classic and inexplicable cases was the aerial encounter of pilot George F. Gorman. So who was George Gorman? He was an American serviceman, a respected fighter pilot who had made significant contributions to the United States Army Air Forces during World War II. After the war, he joined the North Dakota Air National Guard, continuing his military career. As a seasoned, practical man who never exaggerated, he became an ideal role model for young pilots. One of Gorman's notable contributions was becoming an inspiration and teaching tactical skills. He recognized that training was not just about teaching how to fly a plane, but also required the ability to analyze and make quick decisions in urgent situations. Gorman was a rational man, a teacher, a soldier. He became a famous figure in the history of the U.S. Air Force. His life was a prime example of enthusiasm, courage, and dedication. Yet, ironically, he would later be most remembered for a terrifying and mysterious event. We returned to the night of October 1st, 1948. It was a beautiful night. The Fargo sky was cloudless, clear. Visibility was perfect. The autumn air was cool, pleasant, and windless. These were ideal conditions for night flight training. At that time, pilots of the Air National Guard regularly conducted these flights to reinforce skills and familiarize themselves with operations in low-light conditions. In the Fargo sky at that moment, the air traffic control tower confirmed. Only 2 aircraft were active. One was a Piper Cub civilian aircraft, flying at a low altitude near the ground, and the other was George Gorman's P-51 Mustang fighter. No other flights were recorded. On the ground at the Fargo Stadium, a football game was underway. The bright floodlights from the stadium shone up into the sky, incidentally making night visibility for the pilots more convenient and clear. They could perfectly distinguish between the city lights and other objects in the air. At this moment, in the Dakota sky, the training lesson taught by pilot Gorman had just concluded. According to the plan, he intended to land and enjoy a relaxing evening. But because the weather was so beautiful, the sky so clear, he changed his decision. He wanted to fly a few more laps to enjoy the view. The P-51 Mustang circled in the quiet night sky. It was a decision that would completely change his life and create one of the most famous stories in U.S. aviation history. On his final laps in the clear night sky, George Gorman's eyes caught a movement. Below his aircraft, a small, white light was moving. With the experience of a fighter pilot, his first reflex was to assume it was another aircraft, perhaps the tail light of a civilian plane. But as he squinted to observe, a feeling of unease began to creep in. That light was different. It was not the standard green and red navigation light. It wasn't blinking at all. It was just a round, pure dot, emitting a dim white light, with no signal whatsoever to indicate it was an aircraft. And more frighteningly, in the quiet night sky, Gorman heard no engine noise or any sound coming from that dot of light. The perfect weather conditions, which had made him decide to fly more, were now the very factor that helped him see the object's strangeness more clearly. No wings, no tail, none of the familiar features of any civilian or military aircraft he had ever known. This object was purely a light source with no specific shape, creating a sense of mystery and anormality. To be sure, Gorman turned on his radio, contacting the air traffic control tower at Fargo's airport. He asked about other flights in the area. The answer from the ground came back, cold and definitive. None. The tower confirmed that, apart from his P-51 and the civilian Piper Cub flying at low altitude, the Fargo sky was completely empty. Gorman's suspicion immediately turned to alarm. This was impossible. He slowly maneuvered the Mustang, approaching the object within a range of about 1 kilometer, pulling up the cockpit canopy to get a better look. As he got closer, he was stunned. The object was extremely small. He estimated its diameter at only about 15 to 30 centimeters. It was too small to be an aircraft, too small to carry any type of engine. Gorman perceived no physical structure, only a ball of white light with no specific outline. The moment the distance between them shortened, the light suddenly reacted, as if it knew it was being watched. In the blink of an eye, it accelerated and shot away. Gorman, with the instincts of a fighter pilot, immediately pushed the stick. The P-51 roared, giving chase. But that object, it wasn't just fast, it was impossible. It accelerated from a near-stationary state to an unbelievable velocity. It didn't turn, it vectored. It moved horizontally, vertically, shot up, dropped down randomly, defying all of Gorman's understanding of aerodynamics. He was forced to put the P-51 into the tightest possible spiral turns, trying to keep up. But it was hopeless. No human-made aircraft could move like that. At 9:07 p.m., Gorman, fighting to keep the Mustang from losing control, tried to contact the control tower at Hector Airport, 5 kilometers away. He nearly shouted into the radio, asking if they had a signal of anything in the area, besides his P-51 and the Piper Cub. The answer was still no. But immediately after, the personnel at the Hector Tower provided a shocking piece of information. The pilot and passenger on the Piper Cub had also just reported that they were seeing a strange glowing object to the west. Gorman was not alone. Realizing he couldn't match its speed, Gorman decided to play a risky hand. At an altitude of 1,500 meters, he stopped chasing. He would cut across its path. Gorman turned right, trying to head it off. But the object was faster. It shot past, less than 300 meters from his cockpit. After that near miss, Gorman lost sight of it for a moment. He scanned the night frantically, and then the most terrifying thing happened. The light stopped, turned 180 degrees, and dove straight at his aircraft. This was no longer a chase. This was a confrontation. Gorman had only a split second to react. Just before the two objects collided, the strange object, like a ghostly firefly, suddenly shot straight up vertically. Gorman, in a final desperate attempt, refused to give up. He pulled his P-51 into a vertical climb, following it. The engine screamed. The Mustang strained as it tried to climb to over 4,000 meters. The plane began to shudder violently, losing speed, nearly stalling. Gorman looked up. The strange object was now 600 meters above him, hovering as if watching him. He tried to cut it off twice more, but failed both times. The object seemed to be finished playing. It flew towards Hector Airport, and then, as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished from Gorman's sight. Disappeared. The time was 9:27 p.m. Gorman, exhausted and trembling, gave up the chase. He landed, ending a 27-minute dogfight with a strange, small, and unexplainable object. But besides Gorman, there were other witnesses who had observed the entire event from both the air and the ground. As mentioned, at the time the dramatic chase was unfolding, there was another flight in the sky. It was the civilian Piper Cub, piloted by E.S. Cannon, carrying a passenger named Anna Nelson, a local business manager. They didn't just glimpse it. They had witnessed George Gorman's entire pursuit. From their position, both described the object exactly as Gorman had. A small, white dot of light, moving without following any rules like a normal aircraft. Nelson, an ordinary citizen with no technical knowledge of aviation, also affirmed it made no sound and had none of the characteristics of an aircraft. No wings, no tail, no fuselage. Cannon and Nelson had tracked this light. They had seen the incredible agility in the object's maneuvers, a testimony that perfectly matched Gorman's agitated report. But the witnesses were not only in the air. On the ground at the Fargo Airport Air Traffic Control Tower, Controller Lloyd D. Jensen was also glued to the sky. From his safe position, Jensen had witnessed the entire event from start to finish. He described seeing a brilliant white light moving across the Fargo sky at a speed he had never seen. He also confirmed that the object changed direction abruptly and was unlike the characteristics of any aircraft he had ever monitored. We have a veteran fighter pilot, a civilian pilot, a passenger, and an air traffic controller, 4 witnesses from 3 different locations, all giving a uniform description. With such a large number of credible witnesses and strangely coinciding testimonies, this dogfight quickly transcended the confines of an internal military report. It exploded, spreading across America and the world. Everyone was curious about the object's origin. What had George Gorman truly encountered? The United States military and government agencies could not ignore it. They conducted several investigations immediately, just hours after Gorman landed. What, in the end, was that white dot of light? Everyone who had witnessed the dogfight was gathered once again, and once again they all gave identical descriptions of the strange object and the chase. More importantly, Gorman's report was judged to be extremely reliable. He was a famous, experienced pilot, a war hero, not the type of person to be easily agitated or delusional. The preliminary investigation gathered enough evidence to send the case to the Air Force's official UFO phenomenon research projects. Just a few hours later, a group of military officers from Project Sign, one of the United States' early alien research efforts, was present in Fargo. They conducted in-depth interviews with Gorman, pilot Cannon, passenger Nelson, and air traffic controller Jensen. After that, they did something crucial. A few officers went to inspect Gorman's P-51 Mustang with a Geiger counter, and they discovered something alarming. The aircraft had a significantly higher level of radioactivity than all the other fighter planes in the area. This was considered important physical evidence. It suggested the former World War II pilot had flown very close to, perhaps even through, an object powered by an unknown form of energy, possibly atomic energy. The U.S. Air Force investigators quickly ruled out the possibility that the glowing object was a conventional aircraft or flying device of the time. Everything indicated that something extremely strange had happened to Gorman in the Fargo sky. But unfortunately, and perhaps suspiciously, despite the hard evidence that had been collected, from the testimonies of multiple credible witnesses to the abnormal radiation readings, Project Sign failed to reach a definitive conclusion. In the final report, they stated that this incident could not be clearly explained due to a lack of information. That answer did not convince anyone, especially those who were closely following the case. It was too vague, too safe. At the end of 1948, Project Sign ended. Less than a year later, the U.S. Air Force established a new project, Project Grudge, to continue studying UFO phenomena. Under the leadership of Edward Ruppelt, whom we have mentioned, this project was said to have opened the most open and dynamic era in the history of alien research. The leaders of Project Grudge reviewed the entire Gorman case file, but this time they investigated with a completely different bias, to minimize its strangeness as much as possible. Instead of suggesting it was an object not of this earth, the experts at Grudge believed it might be an astronomical phenomenon, or a weather balloon. This created a major conflict. The reports the project received were completely inconsistent with this view. No weather balloon could explain the agile movement, the incredible speed, and the reactive behavior toward Gorman in such a purposeful way. Despite this, Project Grudge still concluded that the incident posed no threat to national security, and no firm conclusion was reached about the object's origin. After 2 major investigation programs, we still had no answer. 3 years later, when the investigation results from the grudge experts were widely criticized, the case was once again reviewed. In 1952, the Air Force went on to establish Project Blue Book, the longest-running and most famous UFO investigation project. They reviewed the entire file again. They assessed Gorman's testimony as credible. They noted he was an experienced pilot with no history of psychological instability. But then, they fell into the same rut. The Blue Book experts hypothesized that the object was perhaps some kind of unidentified meteorological phenomenon. This possibility, once again, could not explain the object's speed and agility. And finally, the U.S. Air Force issued its final conclusion. The incident posed no security risk and was classified as unidentified. All three projects, Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, failed to provide a satisfactory explanation. This turned Gorman's Dogfight into one of the strangest and most mysterious cases in history, and it was this stalemate by the investigators that allowed conspiracy theories and interpretations not based on science to flourish. The nature of this incident had too many details that did not comply with ordinary laws of physics. When human logic fails, we are forced to think in a more non-physical way. And this hypothesis, to this day, is still agreed upon by many. Quite a few American citizens at the time believed that George Gorman's encounter was irrefutable proof of the presence of extraterrestrials. That's right. All the absurd, extraordinary things that appeared in the brave pilot's story could be perfectly explained in this way. The thing that Gorman saw, the thing he fought, was actually a scout ship, a flying saucer of aliens. Recall its characteristics and method of movement. In 1948, not even the most advanced experimental jet aircraft of the U.S. military could achieve such agile maneuvers and sudden changes in speed. The object had no engine, no exhaust, no propellers, details that were crucial and mandatory for any aircraft of that era. This led to speculation that the object was perhaps using an advanced form of propulsion technology far beyond, perhaps even centuries beyond, what humanity had ever known. Furthermore, consider the human aspect. No veteran pilot, no matter how skilled, could fly their aircraft in that way, turning 180 degrees instantly, shooting straight up from a high speed. Because aircraft, and more importantly, the human body, cannot withstand the extreme gravitational acceleration, g-force, generated by such directional changes. This means there was a very high probability that, if there was a pilot inside that tiny object, it must be a species with a different biological makeup, able to withstand such harsh conditions. Or there was no one inside at all. It was an autonomous device, an unmanned probe, a technology beyond our comprehension. One of the key factors that made the vast majority of Americans at the time believe this hypothesis was the historical context. Gorman's Dogfight occurred just 1 year after the world-shaking Roswell event. The 1947 Roswell incident had triggered an explosion of UFO-related reports. Therefore, it was no surprise that this thrilling and credible story was immediately linked to extraterrestrial beings. It's very possible that after the crash at Roswell, the aliens changed their tactics. They used smaller, harder-to-detect ships to continue exploring or monitoring Earth. But unfortunately for them, their plan was accidentally discovered by pilot George Gorman. However, a big unanswered question immediately arose, making this hypothesis incomplete. Why did all three major UFO research projects by the U.S. Air Force, Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, issue vague conclusions or try to debunk it? Was there some undisclosed reason? This is where the conspiracy theory was born. Many believed that the official projects of the military and government were set up not just to study the UFO phenomenon objectively. In truth, they also had another purpose: to control information and calm public anxiety about a terrifying truth. These projects often ended with ambiguous conclusions or explained events as being due to natural phenomena or observational error, as in many other cases the government has admitted to. The most typical and famous example is Roswell. Initially, the U.S. Army Air Forces itself declared that it was a flying disc that had crashed. But just one day later, they immediately changed the explanation, saying it was just a weather balloon. This sudden and unbelievable change led many to believe the government was deliberately covering up the truth. Is it possible that they did the same thing with Gorman's Dogfight? The conspiracy theory suggests that the government may have possessed evidence of aliens, but they decided to keep it secret. The reason? To avoid causing a global panic, collapsing social, political, and religious structures. Publicly releasing this information could seriously affect national security. Besides that, there was another, more practical reason: technological advantage. When a nation is lucky enough to possess technology from a mysterious being, they will certainly want to study it in absolute secrecy. They will seek to develop it before sharing this information with the public, or, more importantly, with rival nations. Therefore, we can completely understand why those top UFO research projects would issue such disappointing and contradictory conclusions. Although this hypothesis is supported by many, it still pushes us into a spiral of skepticism. But there were also scientists and experts who offered more scientific, more realistic explanations to prevent the public from sinking into confusion.